It is a huge pleasure to be in this room today with so many people who are really working at their rock face. I have been inspired by the stories here over the last couple of days, and we're going to do a fireside chat uh, in a virtual Zoom-like way. So imagine a beautiful fire. Imagine this is all very relaxed. Give us one moment while we just check the sound. Linda, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect. This was some magic on the part of the amazing tech staff here. So thank you very much for that. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Linda. I think many of you are already very familiar with her work. She is the founding president and CEO of the Learning Policy Institute and serves as state board president of the California State Board of Education. She is also professor of education emeritus at Stanford University, where she founded the Stanford Center for Opportunity and Policy in Education. I don't think I need to tell anyone that she's also a tireless advocate for the community schools model and has been critical to that movement's growth and success. And so Linda's gonna join us today as we kind of ask a couple of questions, and then we will open it up at the end for some questions from the audience. So start thinking about those tough ones now. So Linda, can you just share a little bit about your personal journey, kind of what brought you into the education work to begin with?
Well, I came from a family that saw education as the, path upward and into the middle class, if you will, and had many experiences of getting to the opportunity to get good public education. I also had a brother who was had experienced some adverse conditions at birth and was had a range of learning disabilities and mental health challenges during his life. And I was really in partnership with him around his learning as he was growing up and going through life. I had the opportunity when I was a high school student back in the 1960s and an early college student when there was lots of public funding for careers in education to become a teacher's aide in the urban public schools that were my location in Cleveland. And that hooked me on teaching. And later, when I came out from I was the first person in my family to go off to college. Being a teacher was the thing that I was determined to be. When I got into the classroom, I saw all of the challenges of the system, teaching in big urban comprehensive, warehouse high schools. And that sent me into looking at policy and teacher education and other things. But I have always kept in mind the need for us to build a system of education that really meets the needs of every child. And I'm delighted that in California, we're trying to do that today.
I love that. I'm also so struck by how many of us in this room came to the work through a very deep and personal connection, right? Whether it's through our childhood or something else. And I appreciate you sharing. You've worked in so many parts of the education system, frankly, have tried to transform and do something groundbreaking in so many parts of the education system. Can you share one thing that you're working on or seeing right now that has you really excited?
Well, I'm excited about where we are today. In California, of course, we've had this very traumatic several years. We've had a public health crisis, an economic crisis, a civil rights crisis, a climate crisis. And these have really made it clear also how many inequalities there are in the system that children and families have to deal with. But out of these kinds of generational crises, we can get transformative change. And we're seeing this all across the world. I work with people in many, many countries that are looking to a new way to get a whole child system of education. And I think that in California, we're making the road by walking it. We are building that system. Both with these mental health resources that are coming into the system. And hopefully we will figure out how to connect them to the places where kids are every day in school with transitional kindergarten, universal pre-K, meals, expanded learning time, community schools. In many ways, both resources are coming into the system and conceptions of how they could meet the needs of the whole child and center the needs of the children and families is very exciting. And I think it's an opportunity for us and a lot of hard work, as everyone there knows.
Yeah, I think that your comment about building the road that we're walking on probably resonates with almost everyone in the audience here. A lot of road builders in this room. A related question, how do you think the challenges of today will evolve into the opportunities of tomorrow, Linda?
Well, I think, what this conference is about is part of that answer. It's about collaboration and collaborative work like this across every level of the system, from the state to counties to districts to schools and across sectors. And that's not easy work, right? Because we've built up a system that is very fragmented and that has, a whole lot of geological dig of regulations and bureaucratic elements. So we're going to have to really look at that and figure out how to allow both the interpersonal collaboration to also be intersectional collaboration and ways that the work can be integrated so that it really meets the needs rather than a pocket of different services that children or families have to run around and try to access. So that is, part of the way that we're going to have to get to the opportunities of tomorrow is by confronting those challenges head on.
I appreciate that. Well, and that actually leads us right into the Community Schools Partnership Program. So if we can kind of talk a little bit more about that, could you share more about the journey to build out that program, including how you made the case for change?
Well, community schools have a history of at least 100 years. They were around in the early 1900s as a way to really support children. But in recent years, I've been part of a group of researchers, learning scientists, neuroscientists, and education researchers and others who've been looking at what we know in the science of learning and development right now. And what we're learning is that, of course, learning is social, emotional, and academic, that we cannot disentangle the social and emotional elements. The ways in which people experience trauma have effects in the way in which they both learn and behave. We also know the importance of relationships as a healing part of the process. And we know that the path to academic learning is through attention to the whole child, not that that's a frill that sort of sits on the side. So we have a lot of evidence now that we can build on. And there's evidence, too, that community schools have been very, very impactful on attendance, on achievement, on graduation rates, and so on. So the concept that we have in California is a very exciting one, I think. It's not only about wraparound supports that we would have available right there in a very easy to access way, the healthcare, the mental health supports, the social work, social service supports that kids need. We have community schools like Buena Vista Horace Mann in San Francisco that do all of that and actually offer housing in the school gym to families on a regular basis and get them en route to housing solutions. So, there are ways that community schools are extraordinary in that respect, but also that they offer an internal climate of safety and belonging, that they figure out how to personalize and support children's instruction. They offer expanded learning time. There's no reason that with what we know about high dosage tutoring and support systems for kids that we can't accelerate learning in that additional time that's available both after school and in the summer. And then they have the partnerships with families and with community organizations that allow them to leverage so much more opportunity for children and to create a more coherent relationship between the school and the family, one in which they really are partners in raising the child. So the creation of a context within which community school coordinators who understand how to access resources and leverage them, in partnership with mental health providers and social workers in schools, can get great efficiencies in our system, as well as terrific supports for kids. And we have many, many successful models around the state. So the fact that we're now investing in, I think it will be over 1,000 schools that serve high need students to build those systems with support from counties and districts is, a really promising path to helping not only kids get what they need, but also educators. And we know we have a shortage of teachers right now. Part of the stress for everyone in the system has been, all of the needs that have been brought to the schools, which are the hub of, life for many children and the communities themselves. Schools have been feeding families. They have been, stepping up around all of these challenges. So having that infrastructure and that support system also, we've got evidence, reduces teacher attrition, makes it possible for educators to do their job and be successful with students who would otherwise, not be able to really be present on a regular basis, fully present, for the educational process.
And I'm curious how you define success for the future of that program, what you want to see over the next 5 or 10 years and what you would need to get there.
Well, on one dimension, success is a set of outcomes that I can talk about, but there's also success in the process of creating schools that are able to overcome the old factory model that we inherited, which was like put the kids on a conveyor belt, and stamp them with lessons as they go through different teachers and, implement the pacing guide and so on, which leaves a lot of kids behind. To a system where we can build these structures like advisory programs where kids meet every day with an adult in a small group to have support for their academic progress, for their other needs, referrals to services, social and emotional learning, restorative practices, so that the school itself is a place where children want to be, where adults want to be, where the environment is supportive in every way. And that means, rethinking some of the ways that we do school. And we've got lots of good models, lots of examples that are succeeding, making it possible for people to learn across the state from one another. Many good examples also of places where mental health providers have been integrated into a caring, positive environment. So we need to be able to use those to make that become the norm for schooling across the state. And that means, kind of emerging from both the factory model that we inherited and the punitive approach to accountability that was really making schools an unpleasant place. And we're seeing, of course, the effects of that when we have chronic absenteeism and when we have teacher shortages. So I want to see that as an outcome over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think the evidence is strong that as we build these kinds of schools, we see it already in schools that have made these changes. You will see strong attendance. You'll see strong family school partnerships. You'll see students feeling hopeful and encouraged about their futures, which means that they develop a growth mindset, and you'll see stronger graduation, attendance, and paths to productive futures because kids will not have given up and decided that there's nothing for them, either in the school or beyond the school.
That very simple goal that you said in the middle around having school be a place where children want to be and adults want to be, I think resonates so deeply. I was fortunate enough to have that a place I wanted to be, and if I could hone it down to one thing I was looking for as we were, finding a good fit for a school for my 6-year-old, it was that, and there's nothing more safe and I think resonant for parents and for communities than having that safe place in school. School-based mental health care is really a vital part of the solution. I'm curious what you think the opportunities and the challenges are for the school-based mental health model.
Well, I'm so excited about the possibilities and to bring in that knowledge base and that expertise, both for children and for adults. I think one of the things we need to think about is how do mental health providers become a part of the community of educators and how do they help support the knowledge base and practices and behaviors of other adults as well as children. The old model has been, attach providers to schools. Counselors, were added on when it was clear that the factory model wasn't attending to the, personal needs of each student. But we have one counselor for every, at one point it was 900 students. I think it may be down to closer to 500 now, but that's still implausible as a way to enable every child to get what they need. But when I've worked in schools and helped start schools where we had mental health providers, as well as social workers and sort of coordinators who would work directly with the teachers as well. We had an advisory system where every day, this was in East Palo Alto. The school still exists. It's graduating now 90% of its kids and sending 90% to college. But it was a time when there was a lot of gang violence in the community, a lot of trauma that kids would experience regularly. So they came into school, and the counselors and the mental health providers who were actually partnered with us from Stanford would work with the teachers on how in the advisory setting they could create contexts for kids to share what was going on with each other, where they could support and understand how trauma might present itself, where they could access the resources of the providers for the students, in a way that was much more supported and integrated into the work of the school. The kids could come, have their breakfast in advisory with, 15 other students in the family group that they would stay with for a couple of years with their teacher, learn social and emotional tools and techniques, which the mental health providers were helping to help occur in those settings. And then, work as well with their teachers around academic needs, getting access to after school supports and so on. And that transformed the possibilities for kids in a community where 2/3 had been dropping out previously. And so we have to think about, how do mental health providers integrate their expertise and their knowledge and their capacity, not only into the one-on-one services for kids, hopefully also into group services for students, because you're going to have in many schools, groups of students who've had the experience of loss or, other challenges and traumas, but also then to be a partner and a service provider, if you will, for the faculty as well. Around faculty wellness and around faculty practices that can then provide distributed supports and counseling for students. So I think that's one of our challenges everything in the traditional system is very fragmented. There's a thing over here and a thing over there, and the kids are referred to it, but it's not very well integrated in a way of working unless you make that a goal and think about the expertise of the professionals as a resource for everyone. Not just to sit in an office and wait for kids to show up one by one, or even worse, to not be on campus and be sitting in some other office, waiting for people to get a bus to get there. I mean, we want to, create a context where everything that everyone encounters is part of a holistic vision for how, human beings support one another in the both challenges we encounter and in the work we do together.
I think how human beings support one another has felt like such a theme of the past sessions that we've had. I'm going to turn it over to audience Q&A actually in just a moment. The theme of the symposium has been about the power of one. We've got stakeholders in the room from all different child serving systems, different agencies, different counties at the state level, direct service level, at the county and city level. How can the stakeholders represented here today kind of partner to function as a true child serving ecosystem? Any advice for the people in the room?
Well, I love the title of the symposium, Breaking Barriers, is what we have to do. And I think the process is going to be around conversation, collaboration, and system change. And so on the one hand, we want to get people to be able to collaborate at the ground level in schools and service providing organizations. But we also have to take the responsibility at the county level and at the state level for making it easier for funding to be integrated, for programs to be integrated, so that it doesn't take a creative genius to figure out how to blend and braid, all of these things. Many states have created a children's cabinet, and I've seen also places where in counties, a children's cabinet works across agencies and people get together and work on the problem of how do we make it possible for this to be an easier process for administrators and for families, for kids. And there are lots of good solutions out there. We've got to really be proactive about that. And I think that's a goal for us in the state agencies in California, as well as for practitioners at the county and district level.
Fantastic. Okay. I think that we've got a microphone that's going to go around. This is not a room full of people who are shy. So would love to take some questions from the audience if we can for Linda. Any brave souls?
We could give them wait time.
Yes, exactly.
I know some people are thinking, I don't want to be the first, but you should be the first. We got one?
We got two.
Good.
Hi, Linda. First of all, thank you so much for zooming in and being here with us today. My name is Natalie. I work with the UCLA Center for Community Schooling on the STAC for the CCSPP. So nice to see you.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. I did hear that you're from the STAC, which is great. I didn't hear your name. So if you could say that again and be sure you're talking right into the mic.
Yes, Natalie Fensterstaff. Can you hear okay?
Hi, Natalie. Yeah, got it. And just keep talking right in the mic.
Yeah. So one of the pieces that we spoke about in an earlier session was around alignment of reporting. And I'm thinking about this coming out of just supporting the designing of the APR for the CCSPP and how we were attempting to think about alignment with the LCAP and other sort of routinized reporting mechanisms. I'm curious what your views are or what your vision is for how we can create a unified, coherent, less taxing reporting system for all of these allied reform initiatives and grants that folks are representing in this room.
Oh, I love that question. I love that vision. And I will tell you that, the state board staff and staff in the Department of Education are having this conversation regularly about how can we integrate and streamline the reporting systems so that, and of course, in many districts, one of the challenges of all the money that's been coming out is that, some people call it the plandemic. There's a new plan and a new reporting system for every source of funding. And people are having to report the same things over and over again in many cases. So there is a conversation going on about how could we get a way that there would be some kind of perhaps an online system where you could sort of upload certain kinds of data that are going to be requested over and over again, and then add to that, to respond to particular questions about particular grants. But we really, we need to get there. As you mentioned, integrating it in the reporting into the LCAP so that, it's not about, the same thing will be true for local school boards, that you don't have to have 55 local school board sessions on 55 grants, but you can, really put it into a strategic plan, put it into a way of working, and then hopefully report on it much more succinctly and in a streamlined fashion. It's a dream, I hope it's not like a Man of La Mancha dream, but I do think that there is a lot of good work going on to try to figure that out and to get us to a place where we're, using our energies on behalf of kids and not on behalf of paperwork.
Linda, your alternate use of the term pandemic got a lot of laughs in the room as well. So I just wanted to tell you that since you're not here. I think we've got another question, and I'll also try to write it in the chat, just in case with the microphone, okay?
Hi there, my name is Chrissy McLean. I am a coordinator of counseling programs at Palmero Valley Unified School District, which is in Santa Cruz County. Thank you for being here.
right now, one of the main focuses for us is to build the capacity of all the adults on campus to ensure that all adults know that they can be present and there for a student. That all adults on campus have something to offer students. So that there isn't this idea that, oh, you have that problem, go see that person. And so, kind of what I wanted to ask you about is, I've been playing around with this idea of how we can sort of create different positions for some teachers, sort of like, if we had, so we have history teachers, we have math teachers. How about if we had social emotional learning teachers? Currently, these are usually like sort of assigned to counselors, but I would like to have a position where a teacher could be in charge of the social emotional learning and kind of like a COSA, but maybe also in charge of some of the tier 1 wellness programs, maybe tier 2 small groups at a school. What kind of issues, or do you have any successful examples of that, and what kind of issues do you imagine could come up around that?
I think I got it. It's about whether we should try to have, the capacity on campus for some of this work, and might we even think about social emotional learning teachers? Did I get close enough? Mm-hmm. And someone who would also be in charge of some of the tier 1 or tier 2 learning issues. Yes. And so I will say on the Learning Policy Institute website, if you were to put in community schools or successful schools, you would get a bunch of case studies of places that are doing the kind of work that I think you are imagining. One thing I would say is that, there are a lot of schools where, for example, there is a teacher, could be a teacher. It can also be, somebody who's a counselor or someone else, social worker, depending on what the expertise is of the people who are there, who do take sort of charge of the social emotional learning program, if you will. But what's the best thing to do to improve the climate in the school and to ensure that every kid is getting lots of touch points is to try to do that in a way where that person is a social emotional learning leader, and they are helping in a, for example, middle or high school. I'm a big fan of advisory systems where every kid has, an advisory group, a family group with an advisor, and then they are supported by the social emotional learning leader to do that work in their advisory so that it's happening on a regular basis for every kid and every teacher. Because the part of what, and I say this for 2 reasons. One is I did teach in big high schools, 150, 180 kids at a time, going past me in groups of 30, 5 or 6 times a day. And as much as I deeply cared about all of my students, I could not care for them effectively. And that's when kids fall off the chain. Only 29% of kids in middle and high schools in the United States, according to the most recent national survey, feel like they're in a caring environment. That is not because the adults don't care. The adults care greatly, but they're organized in a way that does not allow them to care effectively. And so, when you create a system like that, where every teacher has an advisory, every kid has 15 or 20 kids, there's with them in that family, there's a time to do that. Then the social emotional leader or the college advisor can, at different points in time, have those advisors help kids learn the things they need to learn on a regular basis. And all the adults have a shared way of working, a shared way of resolving conflicts, a shared way of, dealing with trauma, a shared way of supporting students, and a shared understanding of then how to refer kids to tier 2 services or other things that are needed for them. So I think, yes, to the idea that teachers could take on some of these roles, and also, yes, to not fragmenting it in one place, but spreading the expertise and the opportunities for relationship across the school so that you get coherence, you get supportive practices, You get kids feeling a touch point every day, and nobody falls through the cracks or feels like they're in an environment that doesn't care.
Thank you.
We probably have time for one more question. If there's any other questions in the room. Got one over here, Linda.
So I'm coming from a school district perspective, and one of the barriers that we have is training time. We have access to amazing trauma-informed practices training. We partner with First Five to compassion and fatigue, the kinds of things that all of our staff need, yard duties, secretaries, etc. However, the way things are currently set, at least in my district, and I think this is very common, is we have 2 professional development days, and of those professional development days, we don't have any of our classified staff who are those line people that are the first one that sees the kid. And so I'm curious, in your experience, districts across California, how do you fund or support or access being able to give this kind of training to people who already are with the kids and doing the work? They just need to know how to go about it. And that's been a huge barrier, at least in our district.
Yeah, if I'm hearing it correctly, it's about finding training time, not only for teachers, but also for classified staff and others. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is another inheritance from the factory model. And it's interesting, I've done studies of schools all around the world. And just to start with teachers, but I'm mindful of your classified staff question also. Teachers in the United States teach more hours per week and year than teachers in any other country in the world. And on average, they teach 8 hours more per week, 8 hours less than the average teacher in the OECD countries in the world for planning and collaboration and professional development time. So a lot of schools that have redesigned, trying to move away from, because the notion of the factory model was that the teacher was a widget, just stamping kids with the lessons as they came through. They didn't need collaboration time, time to learn, time to plan anything else, time to meet with parents. So that was the notion. So redesigned schools that are really rethinking are creating time every week. The school I talked about earlier, every Wednesday afternoon, from 1 to 3 or 2 to 4, something like that, had faculty time for meeting and planning and training, as well as, some other days. And then they would often have external service providers, like recreation. So we have lots of partnerships in community schools, of course. So, getting other folks to work with the kids on activities of various kinds. It could be clubs. Sometimes kids were in internships in the community, which then allowed also the rest of the staff to join in the professional learning time, at various points in time. But it does require rethinking the schedule and rethinking the assumptions that we often have in the schedule. It also means sometimes making some trade-offs, and there's a whole long conversation about this. And I'm happy to send resources to folks who want to ping me at ldh@learningpolicyinstitute.org. You can get a hold of me and I'll send you some examples if you're interested. But it does require rethinking the way you both schedule and sometimes the way you staff schools. And I could speak to that at length, but I think we're almost out of time. And I really appreciate the question because it is very fundamental to doing the work and to moving people forward in the way that I know you are working on.
So appreciate that. I think we're almost at time. We might have time for one more question if that raised any follow-up questions for anyone. Oh, one more from Garth. That one I know.
Hello, Linda. Garth Lewis, County Superintendent of Yolo County. And glad you're here with us, and thank you for dedicating your life's work to our children. I know that you're also very familiar with the work of Dr. James Comer as a child development specialist. Just wondering if you could share your thoughts on the role of child and youth development as a discipline in this work that we're doing from the whole child equity perspective.
Oh, I love that question. And Jim Comer's a dear, dear friend of mine. And I did a little book for ASCD a little while ago called With the Whole Child in Mind, which talks about what he has accomplished and what his model is. So if anybody wants a short read on it, but the Comer model is grounded in child development, and one of his insights as he was beginning to work with schools in New Haven was that there was a lot of school practice that was not rooted in an understanding of child development, and again, the whole child piece of it. So part of what he did and does in the school development program is train everyone, custodians, cafeteria workers, paraprofessionals, professionals in child development. There's like a whole process of learning about some of the things that I mentioned around the science of learning and development, that how human beings learn, that when kids misbehave or are seen as being misbehaving, it's really trying to meet a need, and how do you uncover what that need is and then organize to meet that need. There are integrated teams of mental health professionals and educators and parents who work as a team to continue to think about the practices in the school and how to evolve them and how to support an ever more developmentally supportive and appropriate environment. And so, and the outcomes are very, very strong. And, it's part of what we have to help people understand, because we were coming out of this very punitive era where there was this view that we don't have time for that because we just got to get the scores up. But to get the scores up, if that's a goal, I think we want whole children who feel engaged, motivated, accepted, supported, and learning productively. To do that, you've got to attend to the whole child developmental process. And what we're seeing in the after effects of the pandemic is that schools that are organized that way are doing very well with kids, and schools that are not organized that way are having a lot of dysfunction that they don't have any processes or supports to deal with. So thank you for bringing up Jim's work. It is a wonderful guidepost for the work that we're doing now.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I think that's an excellent note to land on, that note of kind of inspiration and kind of big thinking about the whole child experience. I really, on behalf of the crowd, I know you can't necessarily see the crowd, but there's been a lot of nodding, a lot of engagement as you've been speaking. And so I just want to, on behalf of everyone, kind of thank you for your advocacy for kids, your advocacy for teachers and care providers, and for your time today. So really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. And I just want to thank everybody who's there for all of the work that they're doing. It is phenomenal. It is hard. It is paying off. And you have to know that will, show up as we get further down this road. Thank you.
All right. And appreciation to Nicole Bennett for hosting our fireside chat with Linda.